So welcome back after lunch. I know it's early, or rather, early for lunch, after lunch. However we want to look at it. But I appreciate, and people will hopefully come in during this. But I am excited to have this kind of panel discussion, just because it's a little different than we normally do, as we're combining human trafficking and illicit trade into one conversation, as there is a lot of overlap, as you will hear. And so this has been great to really put this panel discussion. So I thank you to Christian and to Eugenie for putting this together from IFOL. And of course, also a thank you to all of the panelists for coming. And I will hand it over to Kavya.
Hello, lovely to see you all. Welcome to this panel. We have a real lineup of experts in this field, and I'm really excited to kick this off. I'm Kavya, and I lead severe harms intelligence at a trust and safety company called Alice, where we investigate sort of both wildlife trafficking, human trafficking, and as well alongside other forms of severe harms like counter-human human trafficking, organized crime, terror, hate speech, and the works. And today we'll be focusing really on more acquisitive crime, mostly human trafficking and wildlife trafficking. I'll let the panel introduce themselves. They'll be better at going through that than I am. And yeah, we'll go down. Should we start with you, Benoit?
Hello, I'm Benoit Letrel. I'm a board member of ARCOM, which is a French digital service coordinator under the DSA. And I'm the lucky guy in the board. I'm the one in charge of the DSA.
Good afternoon. My name's Nick Dale. I'm Director of Intelligence and Prevention at a small but perfectly formed global charity based in London called Stop the Traffic. Just very briefly, I've got 23 years experience in law enforcement in the West Midlands, where I've worked obviously a lot in human trafficking, not so much in wildlife crime. The only wildlife we've got in the West Midlands are rats and pigeons.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Sethu Gopinathan. I am from Wildlife Trust of India. We are an organization working in India from 1998, and currently we are running more than 44 projects all around the country. And I am working in the Wildlife Crime Control Division of Wildlife Trust of India, and we have working in some software which is called Hawk, which is made to counter wildlife crime and trade. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Eugenie. I'm a wildlife cybercrime officer for IFO, also known as the International Fund for Animal Welfare. It's an international organization which has, I think, offices in 16 countries, but we are active in more than 40 countries around the world. And we work in many different fields, but the one I'm really working on is fighting wildlife crime, and specifically wildlife cybercrime. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. I think we'll start off by trying to understand what the bounds of illicit trade are and what it constitutes. I think to help navigate that, I think it would be helpful to understand a bit more about the DSA and how it sort of fits in there.
Thank you very much. So that's the easy question. But it's interesting because in the DSA, you have two parts. The first part, the part some people don't like when you are fighting illicit trade, is a part which is platforms enjoy a limited liability as regard as the content which you can find on the platform. So that's the part we don't like, because it says that the platform are not checking every content before publishing it, of course, which is at the origin of many issues. I could spend half an hour explaining you why we have this feature. They cannot operate without that. But the good news is that the second part of the DSA, which is the longest one, where you have three chapters, is saying, well, to balance this limitation of liability, you have new obligation, duty of care, and a transparency obligation. And the whole story is how do we use that to the whole framework to increase the accountability of those platforms to fight illegal trade, among other things. So the framework is really, the DSA is a framework, to force. Usually we start the discussion saying, "Oh, we are afraid that the platform are part of the issue." Thanks to the DSA, we can force them to be part of the solution. We are making them accountable, saying, when we send you a notification that this content is illegal because it's a trade of animal welfare which is illegal under international law, they are forced to reply and to take action on it. Same thing on human trafficking. So it's really a framework to make sure the platform are part of the solution. I'll stop there.
Perfect. Big question. That was a pretty solid answer. And I think that really flows into understanding how, across the board, illicit trade ecosystems really operate and work. Nick, I'll kind of turn to you here. What, for you, are the main characteristics of any sort of illicit trade ecosystem, be it human trafficking or maybe even wildlife trafficking?
Sure, it's a really interesting question because I always see organised crime. Organised criminals do what they do to make money, right? And if they didn't make money, they'd do something else. There are different commodities that organised criminals will exploit in order to make the money. Traditionally, it's guns and drugs. I wasn't joking when I said I've never dealt with wildlife crime in the West Midlands, and there are only rats and pigeons in the West Midlands. But you know, animals are a really attractive and valuable commodities. I'm sure we'll get onto. But obviously, my wheelhouse is people, and when people are that commodity that traffickers are benefiting from, if you like, I think there's a lot of similar aspects to animals to start with. In that, you know, you find somebody with a kilo of cocaine in their possession, then you've got a pretty, even I could investigate that to the fullest extent. Really difficult if it's a person. But essentially, traffickers have got a business model where they do it to make money, so they need access to legitimate financial systems. They also need to be able to recruit vulnerable people. And there also needs to be a demand for that, either exploited labour or the exploited sex. So we see it as a sort of three-pillared business model, and if you take, for example, the demand away, the traffickers won't do business. The money side of things, you know, we collect a lot of intelligence about money flows. Even if traffickers are dealing with cash, even if they're dealing with crypto, at some stage they're going to want to enjoy their ill-gotten gains. Somebody will be banking them, and the money that they're producing will be the sort of proceeds of crime, so the banks have a responsibility to identify it. So that I think is where there's those three pillars: demand, money, and recruitment. I think that goes across animals as well as other sort of commodity types.
Yeah, and I think the keyword commodity is what spans across so many different ecosystems. And maybe not seeing these sort of threat actors or criminals as criminals, but also seeing themselves as businessmen.
Entrepreneurs, exactly that. Yeah.
Exactly. And with this sort of supply chain-like framework, and they could be trading in one or multiple different types of commodities. Eugenie, I think I'll turn to you next. When it comes to wildlife trafficking specifically, are there any particular trends or types of criminals or threat actors or businessmen?
Difficult question, because it really depends on the species and the market, because people will trade wild animals for all sorts of reasons, and you have live animals but also their body parts that can be traded. But there is, what is overarching is the fact that the wildlife trafficking is one of the most profitable forms of organized crimes. And there are many similarities in terms of how they function to the human trafficking, in the sense that it's like you said, animals are being treated as commodities, so they're not seen as living creatures, and they're just seen for the market value. So they are trafficked in a highly sophisticated manner by global networks that do that because they know that they can profit highly. They are very high profits with very low risk, or very low risk of getting caught, or that even if they get caught, that there is prosecution. So they can choose basically whatever animal will make the most money And unfortunately, because of social media, it can be very trendy to have some kind of wild exotic animal at your place. So depending on what is trendy, you can have baby lions or African grey parrots or ivory in Asian countries. Then they will choose based on that, and then they will indeed, like Nick said, also profit from impoverished individuals who are sometimes forced to help them. Recently, there was an article published about orphans in Malawi, I think, who were forced into participating into wildlife trafficking activities by Chinese criminal groups. So it really depends on I would say, the country and the year.
Yeah, and I think you raise a really interesting point there of how complex these networks could be. So human trafficking into potential wildlife trafficking activity or forced criminality and part of these organized crime networks. Is that something that you've seen, Nick?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that strikes me about this is that these crimes depend on a power imbalance. So a human trafficking network is a hierarchy where there's a power imbalance between the top and the bottom. The people at the top take the most rewards, but also have the least risk, as you were saying. But the people at the bottom are the people, whether or not they're animals being exploited or whether or not they're people being exploited, the people at the bottom are the ones that are taking all the risk and have limited, the least rewards. And that's everything across from women, predominantly women who are being exploited for sex, to young people, predominantly young boys, say in the UK, being exploited through what we call county lines exploitation, dealing drugs in different parts of the country. They're the ones who are taking the risk, but not seeing the reward. And that whole element of polycriminality, people being exploited to commit other crimes, we definitely see that in the human trafficking world as well, where a lot of scam centres in Southeast Asia are predominantly staffed by people who are exploited and are being forced to be in that situation. So they're victims of crime and they're forced to commit crime. And it sounds like that's the same in the sort of animal welfare world, where people are being forced to commit these crimes. And there's a lot of the similar drivers in terms of potentially conflict and economic disparity that leads to these crimes, these people being recruited and these crimes being committed.
Yeah, super interesting, and I think it kind of fits in with that whole supply chain type thinking. It's sort of like the human trafficking element is one part of that really sophisticated operation, and the end goal might be part of the wildlife trafficking scheme, but it also could be beyond that. I think another thing when we were trying to construct this panel was thinking about some of the conditions where wildlife trafficking and human trafficking can intersect. And one of the themes that was recurrent was the climate crisis. I was wondering, sort of, if across the board you have any initial thoughts about the intersection between them both. Setu, maybe I'll start off with you.
So, about wildlife trade, I'm speaking broadly about the experience what I got from India. I don't have a global experience in that, so I'll speak about what I saw in India. So in India, what I was saying is India is a country with almost 21% of the land is covered with forest area, and we have more than about thousands of protected species. I'm not saying like all of them are facing threats, but many of the species, like elephant, tiger, pangolins, then some birds, and recently the new trade has happened. We started with a fish called Channa barca. These are all getting traded because the main reason in India why people are jumping into wildlife trade is the low risk game. Because if you look into the total conviction rate of wildlife crimes in India, it's very less. Okay, and the enforcement agencies, they are able to catch most of the criminals, but while coming into the conviction, while going into the courts, these cases will not hold back. So most of the cases will get acquitted. So many people's like major users of this articles, wildlife articles, are like super rich peoples, I would say. None of the like I can't manage to buy a ivory. It's so costly. So corporates or maybe like very top officials are interested in buying these things, and most of the buyers in India, I will say, they are superstitious believers. So thinking like a tiger skin can bring some more money to they can increase your wealth. I'm not joking, that's a serious thing happening in India. And you know about the monitor lizards. So monitor lizards, those thing. The traffickers, there's an organized team to hunt the monitor lizards and to take the the sexual organ of that monitor lizard to keep it in home, like that they will believe that it will increase the wealth and public exposure of their family. So they are keeping that kind of trade are happening there. And also our neighboring country China, like they are the main consumers of this kind of wildlife articles, like looking into the smaller species like frogs to the largest species in earth like whale sharks and whales. They are consuming most of that articles. So there are like a lot of organized network for handling this kind of activities, and several are got busted. Recently, like in last year, there was a there was a seizure happened in the northern part of India with most of the more than 25 tiger skins, and we only got the skins, but we don't know what happened about the bones and all, because they are all got transported maybe. So fighting these people, we have to be very and the main problem is trafficking through the airports or maybe railway stations. That's very easy, because when we are transporting some wildlife articles through the airport, the security officials in the airport, they are trained to see the weapons or maybe something which is harmful for the aircraft. That is what like they are trained like that. Their eyes are trained like that, and their machines are also trained like that. So there is no particular system for for identifying some wildlife article. I'll give you a live example. Then from my state called Kerala, there was a guy who was trafficking the star tortoises. You heard about that, star tortoises. So they used to traffic through the Cochin International Airport in a suitcase. Specially made with cabins, like some kind of cabins for all, and whenever they are, and that too in the cabin baggage, I'll say. So whenever they are nearly reaching to that scanning machine, they will just put down that suitcase, and when that shake happens, all this tortoise head will go inside. Okay, so and then they will put that in the scanning machine, and it's okay, like. No problem with that, because they can't see the live movement of the head and all. So like that, we have to find solutions for that kind of things actually.
That is definitely an element that is in common with human trafficking, where I thought, until you said that, I thought this was the only crime type where the organised criminals can go through airport security with the commodity with them and not be detected. And we do see a lot of that. We also see a lot of the kind of defeating of airport security, where there was a case, for example, in Cambodia, where aircraft were landing at Phnom Penh Airport with literally a busload of victims from that were destined to go to one of these scam centres, and they were put on a bus before going through airport security. So there's a lot of, and this is probably happening in the wildlife world as well, there's a lot of bribery of corrupt officials in order to sort of grease the wheels of this thing. And again, for a corrupt official, it's probably relatively low risk in terms of they're not being bribed to move kilos of cocaine, they're being bribed to move an animal or people who may or may not be victims. So that's an issue. While I've got the mic, if I can just go back to climate, which is we are definitely seeing that in the human trafficking world as well. If you think the recent floods in Brazil, there were about over 500,000 people displaced by those floods, and you think the choices that those people face, and if they're then given an offer that might seem too good to be true by a trafficker, then they're going to accept that offer. And we're seeing in Brazil particularly these artisanal gold mines and the sexual exploitation that sort of stems up around there. People making really difficult choices through forced migration. There was that bit of work that you helped us with, actually, with the forced migration. I better mention it as she's moderating the panel. That you helped us with around forced migration in Sudan, where you've got 12 million people displaced. And if people are displaced, they're going to make really difficult choices. And I guess it's the same with, you know, that large swathes of our planet are being changed, and that will change the nature of the animal landscape, and I guess it's the same there.
Yeah, thank you. There's so much to unpack there, and I think what I find really interesting is we are seeing training about spot the signs in airports of people who are being trafficked or modern slavery or sexual exploitation. There's an element of sort of on-the-ground training, and I think we can also translate that now to the trust and safety world. We know what's happening in real time on the ground, but how can we understand what those esoteric signals are on platform? I think there's generally a conversation within sort of within online platforms and spaces where we need signals to be able to combat the issue. How can we train our LLMs for automated content moderation? What are the grey areas in policy? And I think all of these push factors lead to certain demographics who are all participating on the online space, then go and turn to somebody who might be offering them promise of a better life, or really high earnings, or safety or security for their friends or their family. And those online signals are something that I think definitely change depending on the type of trafficking. And that's sort of one of the elements of this sort of huge fight for illicit trade, which is such a huge problem area and intersects in so many different ways. So moving sort of more onto the online platforms and online signals now. And Benoit, do you have any initial thoughts on what online platforms could be thinking about?
Honestly, what are they thinking? No, I will not go in that vein. No, I was thinking, you've used the word a lot, and we've all used it. We are facing organized crime, and we are facing networks. And what we are doing is learning to work as organized, to be as organized as they are, and to make sure that the platform are really part of this organization fighting organized crime. You mentioned the online signals that we need to fight this crime. One of the things we think we have in mind, and we have been pushing it at Arcom last week, and on a different issue, but it applies on all issues, is the fact that some of those platforms make money through advertisement. And analyzing all the signals that are coming from advertisement is really strategic. Yeah, you've heard this figure, I guess, coming from North American media, saying that 50% of the advertisement on Meta are advertisement for illegal product. So that's clearly a thing where we think we should focus our energy, and where we think the DSA is offering promising ways to fight that. So we have a requirement for the biggest platform to establish a database with all online advertisement. It's Article 39 of the DSA, and we have been calling last week for the Commission to speed up the work to produce guidelines on how to operate efficiently those databases on advertisement. And we need the platform to come to the table, and typically the people from this panel to come to the table and to explain why they cannot use those databases at this point. We have started this work, and typically, well, you need some key variables where you want to extract from this huge database a set of advertisements that you suspect are advertisement for illegal trade. What is the variable you need? What is the value you want to extract? If we don't discuss together, we are not going to make progress. We did that typically with the Ministry of Health, and immediately they wanted to make some research on food, and we realized that on several VLOPs, we didn't have the variable and the capacity to extract advertisement for food. We want to extract any advertisement that we include the word animal so that we can be much more active in capturing those signals. So that's just one example on how we have to work together to bring this new level of efficiency and be as organized or even better organized than organized crime.
I love that. Let's try and be more organized than organized crime. I'll sort of like get that on a poster and put that up somewhere. I think that there's one of the key issues in thinking about some of the partners that I'm working with and sort of like online platforms is sometimes this just feels relentless. There's so many different manifestations of the abuse. It's getting more and more complex with sort of multimodal AI individuals and traffickers can scale the operations and stay anonymous. What other signals should we be thinking about, Nick, when looking online?
Well, I mean, you're right. There is a huge volume of it. In terms of signals we can look out for, I think Benoit's mentioned quite a lot. If we are able to scrape websites, which is one of the things we do at Stop the Traffic, right? We've got a long history of scraping adult services websites and identifying the signs of exploitation. We started to do that with job adverts as well. So we've got an algorithm which will run against job adverts, which is pretty good at identifying the exploitation. And I don't know if this phrase translates very well. It's like shooting fish in a barrel when you do it. So the first, which actually sounds very tricky, but apparently it's easy. The first iteration of this, we scraped 48 job ads from Romania, and we found 10 high-risk adverts. And there's a link with the sexual exploitation data set as well. So, I mean, I was really pleased to hear about your database, and I'm sure we'll be able to link up afterwards. But I think there is so much exploitation taking place, but it's working with the partners, as you've alluded to, Benoit. It's working with the partners as well. So we work with Meta and TikTok, for example. We work with Indeed, the job platform, along with a number of banks, and provide those signals to them. So a piece of actionable intelligence that they can search against their data to find. I think that is just a really important thing to do, and the sort of things we're looking for in terms of sexual exploitation is third-party language, a lot of adverts linked to one phone number, risky services offered. In terms of job ads, you know, there was one individual who was Romanian with a UK phone number with a bog-standard Gmail account, claiming to have a company supplying 9 clubs in London with lap dancers. So a sort of medium-sized company of that type, but not looking like a medium-sized company, so it looks very much like exploitation. So those are the sorts of signs we're looking out for. But operationally, it's really important to have somebody to take that insight and take it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's having like a multi-layered approach of, yes, thinking about scale, thinking about actionable intelligence, trying to be proactive in as many ways as possible, and also really being mindful of the cultural nuance. You know, trafficking might have the same overall signals. You know, sex trafficking, for example, we might have promises of high earnings. We might see videos of NCII. However, that might change depending on the geography. Moving on to sort of wildlife trafficking and online signals, are they similar to the human trafficking signals? Are they wildly different?
Thanks. No, I think there might be similarities, but it's different because, of course, what you're selling is different. So we do a lot of online monitoring to try and understand how traffickers are advertising the animals that they're trying to sell. In a lot of cases, surprisingly, they're not necessarily trying to hide what they're doing. For example, a lot of people expect that wildlife trafficking would take place on the dark web, but they don't need to do it because it's still too easy enough for them to do it on the surface web. But of course, some of them are aware that what they're doing is illegal and they're trying to circumvent detection by platforms. Also because we've worked with some platforms and for some of them for a long time. So some of them have adopted, included keywords that we've shared with them so they know what to look for. But traffickers can be very creative and they're constantly adapting and evolving. So depending on the species, it can vary a lot. But for example, it can be as simple as replacing the letter O with a 0 for ivory, or just saying vintage antique or something like that. But I don't tell too much because otherwise you'll know everything. But yeah, these kinds of things can be tricky, and then it can also complicate our case in terms of making it clear for the platform that it's illegal, because then if the person selling claims that it's not actually genuine ivory, then how can we say that it is? Or sometimes they're also claiming that what they're doing is for free, that they're giving away a bird, for example. And so we suspect that most likely this might not be the case, that they're actually trying to sell, and it's just a way to not raise flags. So we also have to use this opportunity that we have with our trusted flagger status to also define together what is illegal for those kind of gray areas, because sometimes it's not as obvious as the law theoretically you would expect makes it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think you sort of touched on a few different ways to combat some of this online harm. We've got sort of the proactive intelligence, the sort of the work that I'm doing and the work that Nick's doing is sort of putting a spin on that one. And then you've also got the more preventive element with messaging, which I know Stop the Traffic are doing, and I know that that you've been doing some of that work yourself. And then you've also got really using regulatory frameworks to our advantage through trusted flagger status. And I think that's sort of like a great entry into coming back to you and talking about the DSA. This is going to be a broad question first, but what is a trusted flagger? And I know, and
So,
no, maybe we need a bit more time to really unpack that one. But I know that IFO has trusted flagger status. What does that look like, and what's a good case?
So honestly, IFO designation of a trusted flagger was an easy business. Because they were trusted flaggers, although they were not aware of it. So trusted flagger is a recognition that a group, usually from the civil society, has a recognized expertise to identify manifestly illegal content, and thus is entitled to be treated preferentially. Thank you, sorry. Because when you look at it from a platform point of view, you receive signals from everybody. And most of the signals is junk. People don't know what to signal. So when you have this feature where you recognize somebody as a trusted partner, you know that it's in both interests, the platform and the trusted flagger, so that those signals be treated immediately. We have it with IFO, we have it typically on human trafficking and anything related to individuals. The platform knows that some individuals are at risk on their platform. They have a million of signals, and they don't know which one is the right one, which one is the one identifying the person, the individual at risk. So if you recognize a trusted flagger, it's an insurance that you will be more effective. So it's really a key feature. It was not invented by the DSA. It pre-existed as the DSA. It has been invented by the biggest platform, in fact, which have been bugged by NGOs telling them, you are part of the issue, who wanted them to be part of the solution. With the DSA, we managed to get the best aspect of it, because we're adding some transparency feature to make sure that nobody can abuse it. So yes, we have the trusted flaggers to report annually, so that we can confront the reporting with the reporting from the platform and see where there is friction if need be. And we're also in a position to explain that they are not abusing the system, because we're asking this transparency feature. So it's really a nice feature of the DSA. The only thing which is missing in the DSA is the fact that the DSA is not a budgetary law, and you need to finance the trusted flagger, because it has a cost, it has a lot of value, and you have an issue to finance them. So if somebody in the room has some money, please invest it in trusted flaggers.
Thank you. And I know that the IFO is also working with the Wildlife Trust of India on the Hawk system and the implementation of that. Can you sort of summarize what that partnership looks like? Because I think that would also feed into how you're a trusted flagger and be a really interesting case study for future detection.
Yeah, thanks. I'll hand over the mic to you in a bit just to explain the background for this. So indeed, we received the trusted flagger status a year ago, but we've been working with online platforms for a longer time, I think over 20 years now. Thanks, Lionel. And so for us, the added value of the trusted flagger status was that, of course, we had a lot of voluntary collaboration from different platforms worldwide, but it's not always possible because not all of them will prioritize wildlife trafficking or fighting against wildlife trafficking. So at least with that status, we give them no choice in a way. But I'm very glad that you mentioned it, Benoit. Indeed, the budget is an issue. So even though we received that status, we still rely on our pre-existing structure and capacities. And we're a small team against a gigantic international problem with hundreds of thousands of animals being trafficked. So as part of this work, we have decided that we would rely on the help of volunteers who, and we have also experience in that. So the idea is that we recruit them, we select them, we train them to help us monitor online platforms so that they can identify potentially illegal listings with wild animals offered for sale. And of course, we still remain the entity that reviews what they have identified to make sure that it fits our criteria and we agree that it's illegal, and then we can flag it. But we rely on a system that's a bit inefficient in the sense that it takes a lot of time, and if you want to keep your volunteers engaged and motivated, because we're very happy to rely on them, and we want to grow, because the whole point of having this status is to be able to flag as much listings as possible. We need a system to make the identification and flagging process as fast and accurate as possible, and that's where we rely. And we asked Setu and Hawk to help us. So maybe you can explain.
Okay. Before saying about Hawk, I just need to go to the background why we started a system, like why we build a system like this. So in the 2015, I said, like in 2015, some news came out from a particular wildlife division of Kerala of elephant poaching, and then we started the investigation, and it ended up to busting of a huge wildlife traffic poachers and traffickers, and it's a huge network. And after that, like when we after the investigation, almost 74 accused was there in that case, and we got a seizure of more than 450 kgs of ivory. Raw ivory, I'm saying, and we don't know how much they sell before, and we don't know like how many elephants got died, but still like we managed to capture all the accused involved in that crime. So after that, like when we analyzed the situation, it got to know that all the poachers who involved in this crime were residing on the local areas where this crime happened, and they're all habitual offenders. And still the agencies were not able to monitor them because all the data related to them were in the shelves in papers, and there is no way to analyze that or identify who all are this, because in our country, like if a particular forest officer is coming to a place, and he will get at least a maximum of 3 years in that particular area, and then he will move out to another area. So the new officials who are coming, they are not even getting chance to analyze the data and to identify the situation, to identify the local gangs, all those things. So then the discussion happened, and with the Wildlife Trust of India and the Kerala Forest Department, and it came to a solution that WTI said, like we will build a software, and we just referred to the IFO's 10 BOMA at that time, like they were doing a software called 10 Boma, and it was kind of a offenders. I'm not sure. I was not at that time, so I didn't see the 10 Boma software. So it was kind of a offenders management software. If I'm not wrong, I guess, right? Okay. So then we move on to that, like. We in Kerala, then the senior forest officials came with a solution that if we want to make an offender database, that is not going to help with the frontline forest staff who is working in the field, who is working daily, going to the forest, patrolling, and all those people. Like, it will not help them. And then we came into a solution that we need to make a software which is going to helpful for the frontline forest staff also. Then only they will use it. Okay, so that thought started making. I'm sorry. The weather in Paris made me. And at that time, like we made a software for the entire offense management. 1 second, let me. So from there, like we started with the offense management, like from if an offense happened, we have to start the process from the registration of the case till the case got end at the time of in the court, like how it will, maybe it's got maybe it will be a conviction case or a drop case. So whatever procedures we have to follow, we will make through that software. So the data what we are collecting, it can be used for analyzing also, but that part the frontline forest staff is not involving in that. They don't know that they are giving the data to for a better analysis and all. I'm really sorry.
That's okay. But I think that what the Hawk system is sort of showing is how you're working with different stakeholders to then combat a similar crime. Nick, I'll turn to you.
I was just going to say, I love that story because it's like the origin story of Stop the Traffic, where our founder Ruth Durnley will say she was visiting frontline organisations in India, and there was this one particular lady who was supporting victims on the front line, and she had case notes written with a pen on a piece of paper stuck to the side of a tent. And Ruth saw that and thought the power of those stories, not only to manage the cases, but also, as you've alluded to there, Sekou, if you elevate yourself from the stories, you can see a strategic picture, and that strategic picture will then help you tackle the issue.
I think that's such a lovely sort of like a lovely note to like wrap up on our conversation. I know that we're slightly running over. I think as a final sort of note to wrap up, it'd be great to just hear from you what you would hope the next stages in your work would look like to combat illicit trade. Because I know you're all working on it in multiple different directions, that all trying to fight the good fight in slightly different ways. So what's next for you? Eugenie, I'll start with you.
Following Benoit's call, if there is a founder for our Trusted Flagger status in the room, please go ahead and meet us at our stand. We'll be there for the 3 days of the event. But on a less, still real but joking notes, we hope to really make the best of our Trusted Flagger status and beyond the Trusted Flagger status, because of course we work at the international level. We really hope to keep disturbing criminal networks, offline and online, to protect wild animals.
Okay. So in our case, what we are saying is we have large plans. Currently, the software, what I mentioned, Hawk, we started in Kerala. It's not only active in Kerala, it's currently with Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Odisha, and we are going to implement in another 3 more states. And WTS, we are not a software developing company. We are just a conservation organization. And as Eugene said, this is like a very small team. So now we are planning to collaborate all these states for data sharing. So that's what we are saying, and that will help to identify the local gangs and all. And we are going to integrate some AI features also to identify the prediction models. And as I said before, we are regularly training the frontline forest staffs, then the airport security officials for identifying the wildlife articles. So these are all the major activities what we are doing and we are planning to do in the future.
So I hate to show off, but we do develop software and sort of tech and data solutions. And I won't get into the first bit too much, but we are looking to improve our accessibility to data, improve the graph database and the use of AI so that we can, and visualization so we can get much greater insights. But the other thing we do that I haven't touched upon is targeted online prevention programs where we essentially replicate what the trafficker does in trying to recruit from vulnerable communities, but reach those vulnerable communities with crucial safety information. And if you have a look on our website, you can see how effective they are. What we're looking to build is a permanent online safety centre. So there's a kind of symbiotic relationship between the intelligence, so we get a strategic intelligence picture, we understand what the threat is, we understand how traffickers are reaching out, and there is a permanently and automatically safety information reaching out to those vulnerable communities, and that's what we're looking to do over the next couple of years.
Thank you. Well, on my side, I've been saying it when introducing myself. I'm focusing on the DSA, and the next step is to start focusing on the DSA. In fact, in the sense that the DSA is not a magic wand, it's a nice way to bring the platform to the table. But when we just focus on trusted flaggers, we're focusing on taking down content. And we have learned that we have to find the right compromise between going after the content to take them down and to go after the individuals to stop the trafficking. So the next step is to build a forum where we have the judiciary authorities which are around the table, the police forces, the regulators, and still the civil society on the platform, so that we can have those very important discussions saying, where's the trade-off? And from time to time, the public prosecutor will say, well, right now we want to go after the individual, don't touch the content. In some other cases, we'll say, no, go after the contents. We cannot be everywhere. And to have so again, it's a question of increasing how we are acting together collectively beyond the DSA, having a global view and be more organized crime.
Love it. I still love that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Caroline, also for giving us the spotlight to actually talk about trafficking as a business. I think it's been something that we've all sort of been kind of campaigning for in our own ways. So yeah, thank you so much to the panel and
And thank you.